an extension of Monday's meeting. Let's do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the notice of this meeting has been provided as is required by Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, with respect to the Home News Tribune to publish the same. This announcement must be entered into the minutes of the meeting. Roll call, Maria.
Chairman Engel?
Here.
Commissioner Frankel?
Present.
Commissioner Katz?
Here.
Commissioner Moskowitz?
Here.
Commissioner Benjavenga?
Here. For those attending today's meeting, please be aware that all board meetings are recorded by audio. The purpose of the meeting is to look at the emergency ballots from the towns that...
Before we start, Commissioners, I'm asking you to reject these two mail-in ballots.
No, we can't hear you.
These two mail-in ballots were put in the Helmetta locked mailbox, not a drop box, and it was post-election. The municipal clerk found it on the 15th, and it came to her office, so these were
Helmetta.
Helmetta.
Well, wherever they're from, they're late. I move that we reject those two ballots as described.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, Maria.
Chairman Engel?
Yes to reject.
Commissioner Frankel?
Yes.
Commissioner Katz?
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz?
Do we know that the box had been checked every day?
It was a mailbox. It wasn't a drop box.
It wasn't a drop box. It was a Helmetta. It was a Helmetta mailbox.
I just broke my glasses. Yes, wherever it was, someone needed to be in that box prior to your receiving it, no?
What's that?
Somebody needs to check, we or the post office.
It wasn't a drop.
It wasn't a Middlesex
So
County.
the post office, somebody, do we know that it was checked properly?
It
That's
sounds
all I'm
like
saying.
it was a Helmetta municipal.
And it should not have been in a post box anyway, is what you're saying.
It wasn't a
No matter what.
And it wasn't in a board of election drop box.
And it wasn't in a postal box.
It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. You're telling me it was, Helmetta has their own,
And Helmetta has their own box for taxes, water bills, and such.
that's what it was.
Gotcha.
And it was post-election.
Checked it.
Yes. Commissioner Moskowitz?
Roll call. Continue. Roll call. Continue.
Commissioner Moskowitz?
Beatrice, yes or no?
Yes,
Thinking?
I am weighing my choice.
I reject.
I would say yes.
Commissioner Benjavenga?
Yes.
These, per our conversations, Chairwoman Engel and Commissioner Registration Frankel were at the warehouse where we opened up the back of the machines. There was a court order. All other machines did not have any materials in the back of them. All the bags were emergency bags were sealed. These are the only ones that were opened. So again, Commissioners Engel and Frankel decided that it would be best to present them for the board and open them up and see if there is anything inside that would be worthy of discussion.
Just to clarify, right, there were probably, the court order provided us to check probably 40 or 50 different polling locations as specified, which you thought might have been opened, and those were all checked. And the only thing that bags were open were these 9, 3 in Old Bridge and 6 in Piscataway.
It is three Old Bridge, 1 Metuchen, 1 Sayreville, and then Piscataway.
Do we know how many how many emergency ballots were put in each emergency ballot?
That would be 30 per district within that.
30, well, it's some locations.
30
So
for each district within that location.
Each individual election district?
Well, I mean, if there was, the
If
ballots.
there were different wards, if there were different ballot faces, it was 30 per ballot face in each polling location. So in Old Bridge, I think the 3 locations either had 2 or 3 wards in it, so there would have been 60 or 90, is that right? Okay.
Different districts, yeah.
Yeah, the wards part of it, because the individual election districts, the ballot face was the same, 30 was what we
It was the same ballot base.
Okay.
And it was is not in each machine.
No.
All right, just for the public.
Yeah.
Not each machine, every machine does not get emergency help.
He's telling them. On the bell.
We're going to open the bags now.
The first one we'll open is Eldridge, machine 1240, Madison Spartan School. Envelopes.
Telecommission.
Actually, pen. And
Pencil.
I know it.
All 30 are present.
Please speak up because we can't hear that.
All 30 are present.
There was only one board in that location?
What's that?
Ward 3.
Okay. So, just to be clear, when you looked at the 30 ballots, 30 emergency ballots that were put in the bag are all there, and it looks like a bag of envelopes, that wasn't open either.
The envelopes are in there. Next one will be Oldbridge Machine 1263, which would be the Richard Allen Cooper Civic Center. but there is no ballot in the bag or in the envelope.
Okay. Does the envelope thing sealed too, or
It,
are they not?
not sealed, but there's nothing in it.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean, it could have been put in provisional certificate.
yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
You-
But I don't see anything.
Just as an explanation, Madam Chair, may I- just as an explanation to the audience, so we have three wards in that location.
It's
There were-
Ward 1. Ward 1.
Just one ward, 3 districts, probably, right?
We had 30,
There was 1, 2, and 3, and the one missing from the packet was from Ward 1.
One.
okay.
Or district, yeah, Ward 1.
Ward, we're talking wards. There is one ballot that's missing, there's one emergency ballot less than the total number that were put in there in Ward 1. If it's not there, I speculate that that emergency ballot was taken and put into a provisional ballot envelope because there were no paper provisional ballots. That provisional ballot flap was completed, and assuming the person was entitled to vote, it was already counted.
This is Old Bridge Machine 1260, Carl Sandburg Middle School.
Can I ask you a question? So are they counting the ballots that were put in the machine that weren't filled out? So they're
Correct.
just subtracting, like say there were 30, there's one missing, that's why there's 29. That's what we're.
There's
So you-
there's
okay.
one
Those are all
physical
Right.
emergency
Got it.
ballot that was used,
Okay.
that's not missing in Ward 1 in Old Bridge.
I get it.
The speculation or the likelihood is, since it's not in anything here, is that it was put into provisional ballot envelope as the
Okay.
functional equivalent. of
Yeah, because I was wondering why
provisional.
there's 30, 30, 30. It's like, oh, that's
No,
odd.
that's-
Okay.
Depending on the district. So this one was Carl Sandburg. This one, there are emergency ballots used in this district, but again, none of these are filled out in any way. There's nothing in the envelopes, nothing in the bag.
So there's, and how many,
There's 28.
so two of the emergency ballots in this polling location are not there, and they're not in the bag. So once again, the speculation is that the poll clerks had the people put their emergency ballots as the functional equivalent of a paper provisional ballot in a provisional ballot envelope, filled out the flap of information and put it in a provisional ballot bag, and to the extent that person was entitled to vote, it was already counted.
That's it for Old Bridge.
By the way, what ward was that?
I don't have a machine in front of me. I just know that it was Carl Sandburg Middle School.
4 and 2. 4 or 2.
What, 4 or 2?
4 or 2.
And there should have actually been
It's
60.
Ward 2. Ward 2?
That
Ward
one was
2.
Ward 2.
A ward just, okay.
This is Metuchen Machine 1122, Campbell School.
I was at camp. I thought we were going to have to fight over accepting the emergency or not.
For Metuchen, there are 22 emergency ballots in this one, so for,
There's no completed emergency ballots in that
yeah,
bag.
no completed emergency ballots, 22 remaining, nothing in the envelope.
Same speculation as we did for others. that they're likely to be used and put in provisional envelopes, and to the extent they were.
Sayreville machine 1634, Eisenhower School.
Tom, what town was that again?
Sayreville.
That's
Sayreville.
Sayreville. Uh, 26 emergency ballots, none completed, nothing in the envelopes.
Oh, wait, no. Wait, how many were there?
26.
Yeah.
Piscataway machine 1303, Eisenhower School.
Piscataway's Eisenhower School too?
What's that?
I thought Sayreville was Eisenhower School.
They're both different
Eisenhower
towns.
School.
Both Eisenhower schools. All right, just want to make sure my notes aren't going to be screwy.
Right.
Yes. Right.
Right, the provisionals don't ever go to.
Piscataway Eisenhower School, 3 emergency ballots, none completed. Nothing in the envelopes.
No, there were 3 in the envelope, or there's 27 in the
There
envelope?
were 3.
3 left.
So the 27 were used, potentially, presumably.
Piscataway machines 1299, Harbor School.
Provisional envelope.
Maria, you were taking all these numbers, okay?
He signed nothing.
Thank goodness.
He signed nothing. Where was his vote? Right? That's what it said. Because the ballot has nothing. Yeah.
Provisional ballots, no emergency ballots. So they probably used all their emergency ballots and they put the extra.
So they just put provisional ballot
When,
envelopes?
when they receive them.
Are they blank?
No,
They're blank.
those are all blank provisional ballot envelopes.
Yep.
And there's no emergency ballots or emergency ballot envelopes in there?
Correct.
And the provisionals were all picked up from the polling place, we brought in. That is.
So they probably threw away, maybe they put the speculation.
I was gonna say, no.
I won't speculate.
Piscataway machine 1380,
I won't further- I won't
Fellowship
further-
Administrative Building.
And again, not every poll knew they should have it,
No emergency ballots.
but. Okay, so now what you did in that instance, you went to the machine in that voting district that would have had Or you opened all the machines? Did you open only the machine that was had the emergency ballot?
No, you open all the machines.
All the
At the
machines, so
location.
that the
All the
emergency
machines in that
ballots
location.
were nowhere?
Correct. And then we have one, this is for the scattering
Only
machine
one.
1300 for the Arbor School. We have again, we have one emergency ballot that was filled out, but no, again, I'll pass that down, wasn't one emergency ballot that was filled out, but it wasn't in an envelope, no identifying information. And it was in the back of the machine with just
There was no emergency ballot bag
no,
at that location at all, or was it?
no, it was just
They just left
again,
that.
Commissioner, these were just found just in the back of the machine, outside of the bag.
But the bag was sealed
The bag,
in that location.
Outside of the bag.
Yes, I
outside.
know, but the bag that was at that location was
no,
sealed.
it was outside of the bag, that's the Arbor School.
Oh, that was one of the ones, the
Yeah.
bag was open.
It was the one next to this one.
And next to,
This is the Arbor School machine 1299. This is
Okay.
Arbor School machine 1300.
they just stuck a ballot in the back of the.
So they just
Correct.
probably stuck some in
Figuring
the back.
somebody would pick it up. Even though I was reading. I said even I,
You object that?
even I reject it. There was an hefty
For
debate.
the purposes of the audience,
Is
ballots
there a
in the back
motion to reject this ballot?
in
I make motion to
odd
reject that.
places where they're not
I
supposed to be.
second, oh, you seconded
Sure.
You're making a motion, Commissioner Katz?
No.
Benjamin.
I make a motion to reject that
Benjamin.
ballot.
Commissioner Benjamin
Okay,
made,
okay.
and
Reject
Mr.
that one ballot. Second,
That was seconded by,
roll call, Marie?
Chairman Echo.
Yes to reject.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes to reject.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes, to reject.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
heavy heart, yes to reject.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Yes, reject.
And as I was saying before, for the purpose of the explanation, when ballots come back in odd places with the election supplies or something else, no chain of custody, nothing else, they're just essentially automatically rejected, although sometimes we vote to confirm that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner comments, any further? Commissioner comments? No? Public comments? Charlie, 5 minutes?
Good afternoon, members of the board. Charles Cradaville, New Brunswick Today. I want to understand what the difference is between the Board of Elections and the Board of County Canvassers. Is this the Board of County Canvassers?
Go ahead, Don.
The Board of County Canvassers is the equivalent, is the same as the Board of Commissioners with a different hat,
Okay, so
okay?
canvassers.
To the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Who is the clerk of this board for this meeting?
For this meeting.
Yes, your meeting has the Board of County Canvassers. I believe there's a statute that identifies someone to be your clerk for this meeting. Am I wrong?
I simply don't know the answer to that.
Okay, well, I believe it's the county clerk. I want to make sure of that, but I don't see the county clerk here. So I'm noting again that the county clerk has not attended these meetings since January. County clerk has been responsible for a lot of the irregularities and disenfranchisement that's happened unnecessarily. And I'm disappointed that the county clerk is not here because the statute says that the county clerk is your clerk for this meeting. Have you made the ask of the clerk to attend your next regular meeting?
That were you,
No, but I can inform her of their next meeting.
Okay, and would respectfully suggest, do more than just inform her. Request her presence to break down everything that's happened in these elections. I know it's not an easy job, but we've been promised there will be a accounting of the problems, and I think your next regular meeting is the best time to do it, and I think it's not going to be as good of a discussion if the county clerk is absent and does not even send a representative. I think, in fact, it's the best practice for that office to send a representative to every one of your meetings, since you work so closely together, and it's just doesn't make sense to be talking around each other and working around each other. You have these meetings, they have a staff, they can send someone, and it should be the clerk, if you ask me. I want to follow up on the emergency ballots. Do we know how many were voted and counted as provisionals?
Personally, I don't have any. But we look at it at some point,
We
correct?
don't have a counting, we made the remakes into provisionals as you guys instructed at the previous meeting, but we don't have a count.
So you just remade ballots and didn't count how many you were doing?
No,
Or there will be a count, it's just not available at this meeting?
As far as I know, correct?
Will there be a count?
correct me
We
if
have
I'm
the
wrong.
remakes, we wouldn't be able to provide.
We would have the original,
We have the originals and then we have the
of the
remakes.
emergency ballots, that the emergency ballots would not go, do not have anything on it that would allow it to go through the machine and be counted.
Yeah, I understand all that.
Emergency ballots were remade with by a bipartisan staff, a Republican and Democrat employee, so they went in there. So we have the originals in terms of that. So that information could be available at some point.
But he was asking for all provisionals?
I'm curious how many emergency ballots got
Emergency
voted on, because we saw, 30 deployed, sometimes 0 returned at the end of the day, other places less. This isn't every machine. I'm just trying to get a single number of how many emergency ballots got voted and counted, and I'm kind of surprised that that's not available, considering it sounds like you're going to certify the results today, right? This is the end of the road, isn't it?
Tom, if you could put together what emergency ballots were cast in each thing, provide it to the commissioners and maybe copy it to the press.
Thank you. I would very much appreciate that, because I am working on a series of articles on this, and I think that, we should at least have the basic facts. And I look forward to learning more and asking more questions at your next meeting, provided I can attend. I hope that I can. But yeah, I just want to continue to raise concerns about ES&S, the company that provided the poll books that repeatedly failed us on Election Day. I'm sorry? It wasn't the poll
I'll
books.
wait for my
You're saying it
turn.
wasn't the poll books. Then what was trying to get on the internet or trying to connect to the SVRS over and over again, if not the poll books?
Are you interrupting your own speech or taking?
I'm just asking a question in response to your remark. I would like to know what,
The amount in use was so much larger than the early voting times. The power needed to make all of those work was not available because it had not been put in properly, from what I understand from the state.
Your time is up, Charlie. You can come back for
sure.
more minutes if somebody else doesn't want to speak.
I just want to make a comment.
State your name.
Debbie Walker. Election day was a nightmare. I was working at the polls. At our poll location, from 6 a.m. till 8:41, people could not vote. And once we figured out, we were told it was the router, they told us the Nighthawk. When that disconnected, then the machines started working. But there were hundreds of people in line that had to go to work and were not able to vote. And I don't know why they rolled out a voting system like this in a governor race. You should have had a trial in an off election year. I just don't think this was the right time. A lot of people were not given the right to vote, and I think it really affected some of the votes. I really think it changed some seats. And I was very disappointed. I just felt bad for a lot of people. They had to go to work, and they said they couldn't come back. There were some people that were actually traveling to upstate New York. And they didn't have time. And there was a long line to fill out the provisional ballots as well, because everybody in line was rushing to try to fill out provisional ballots. And a lot of people just said, I'm giving up, I'm not doing this, I don't trust the paper ballots, I don't know what's happening with them. And here we are in America, 17 days after an election, and we don't have results. Election day, we used to know who the winner was at night. I think we have to start going back to that. I think we have to really rethink what we're doing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody Anybody else like to speak? All right, Charlie, you got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to know how many polling places had paper provisional ballots when they opened at 6 a.m.?
That's a question for the county clerk. We don't have that.
No.
We don't have that.
I think we could say that that was 0.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a astonishing failure that, the county clerk needs to account for. Do you know what time of day the last polling location received the paper provisional ballots? Because of course they rushed to print them and deploy them. Do we know what time of day? How long it took to actually get them paper provisional ballots on election day?
I do not. Yeah.
I understand that the municipal clerks were going to their respective towns and handing them out. But I don't know what time of day it was.
Okay, so it could have even been afternoon.
Could have been.
Yes.
We'd have to ask the county
It's a
clerk.
second or third hand.
Yes.
It would be, that would not surprise me. If that's second or third hand, I can't.
And I know that some towns requested additional equipment,
Yes.
because they were overwhelmed and there were lines. Heard some cases the equipment didn't even arrive till 7 p.m. Do you know how many additional ES&S voting machines were deployed throughout the course of the day beyond what had been planned to be the total number? 17 additionals.
How many additional poll books?
I know the 17 number offhand, I don't know how many polls.
So it was 17 machines.
Right.
And the poll books is unknown. Not unknown, it's just, doesn't
I
happen.
don't have it.
Right, not at the tip of his fingers, that's fine. I'm going to continue to follow up on this. I think ES&S is also a necessary party to have present at your meetings. They've been elusive. Someone who remains nameless messed up the counting of the votes in the April school board election in New Brunswick. They haven't answered questions about that. They haven't answered questions about their failures of their equipment in this election. And I think that, if it's true that it's not their equipment's fault, then they should say that. They should come here and say that. They should respond to my emails and say that. They should put out a statement and say, this was not our equipment, here's what the problem was. But they haven't. They've been silent and shady, and the county should not be doing business with them, and I'm disappointed that our governor, without knowing all the facts, has said that these poll books are going to be used again, definitely. This is just unacceptable. I think everybody who was on the ground and actually working on election day understood that it was a disaster. Early voting was a huge success. Credit where credit's due. It was tough. It was last minute. That was deployed pretty well. Election day was a disaster, and we've got to be honest about it. We've got to get to the bottom of how it happened and make sure it never ever happens again. Not here in Middlesex County. Thank you.
Any other comments? No?
I just think we should push for the voter ID, because the people that came in and were willing to show their driver's license or their sample ballot, they were scanned in quickly. I don't see a reason that you can't have voter ID. We want to know who's voting. It makes it easy. Plus, if you go to Costco, you need voter ID to get into Costco. You need to buy cigarettes or liquor. So voting is a very important right, and I don't see why people are opposed to voter ID. And I think that's something that we should push for. I think it'll eliminate a lot of people's fears that elections are crooked. That's just my opinion again.
Okay, thanks,
I
Dan.
have a quick question, if you don't mind. Kevin Garcia, will this be done today?
Yes.
Because everybody's asking me, and I keep telling them, I don't know. 17 days later, I have a lead. Don't even know if I won yet. 17 days later. I just think it's amazing how we don't know.
Not bad.
And people like, they think I'm kidding when I say I don't know. I don't know. I said, I'll know tomorrow. Come tomorrow, well, we found more ballots. Maybe we'll know next week. When does it end? There's no longer election day, it's election month. And it's so, to me, it's annoying.
Well, it's
We have to put an end to this somehow. It should not be election month any longer.
We need to reach out to the legislature.
Mhm. And I'm on the other side of it. I'm one of the candidates. I have a lead. I just want to know.
Well, it should be updated
I
tonight,
have
right?
one, yeah, I just have one comment in terms of response. The timing, the length of time post-election where the results are final or available is based on the changes in the election law that's in place. Just to be very clear, the law currently provides that the vote-by-mail ballots can arrive, if they're properly postmarked, basically 7 days after election, the Monday after election. You cannot start counting or really complete processing the provisional ballots until all the vote-by-mail ballots are in and processed, because a provisional ballot only gets counted if the staff or if the Board of Elections confirms that they did not vote a vote-by-mail ballot, and you can't determine that until that's finished. So you have Tuesday Election Day, the following 8 p.m. Monday, the following election, where vote-by-mail ballots can come in by mail. All those that have come in have to be finished to be processed and on the record. Then you can start processing the provisional ballots. We had 10 or 11,000 provisional ballots. So you couldn't start to count, you couldn't start to process those 10 or 11,000 ballots. And it's not just counting them, it's checking each one individually to make sure that that person is either, if they're registered to vote and they didn't vote a vote-by-mail ballot, and they're legitimately voted one, then they can be counted, or not to be counted. So each one of those 10,000 and change had to be done individually. It's not starting at the very earliest, the Tuesday after election, probably later because you have to finish doing the vote by mail. That's your structure. So no matter how efficient any Board of Elections in terms of counting is done, nothing, you wouldn't have had, you might have had the results prior to today, but you wouldn't have had the results for probably 10 or 11 days, at least after Election Day. And that's structural. That's what the law provides now. If you don't like the law, and I'm not going to comment on what my opinion of it is, it's just this is, because we're an administrative agency. Our job is to enforce and follow the law in effect and do the best we can under that law. If you don't like the timing, and I may not as well, but that's a different issue, then it's you have to deal with the state legislature to change the law, and the governor to sign any change law.
No, I understand that totally. My concern is, and I get that part of it. From what I understood, this was supposed to have been done this past Wednesday, certified and everything else. Then they find these ballots on a Tuesday. Well, why did they find these ballots the day after the election? They had the machines.
That's not true.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm asking.
So
Why 2 weeks later is what I'm saying.
because the commissioners decided that there were still question marks about emergency ballots being used, and were all the emergency ballots accountable? And then actually, we went to court to make sure that all of these ballots were accountable. That's to make sure every ballot is counted, every ballot. So that's why we had to go to court, we had to get a court order, to open up the back. You just can't open up the back of the machine. So we did that, okay? And us as two commissioners were there earlier this week to make sure that that was brought to you here, was brought to our meeting here today. So it sounds like it's administrative, it is administratively, but we want to make sure that, let you know that we want to make sure every ballot, if we can help it, is counted.
No, I appreciate that. I get
So
that.
we're very fastidious in what we're doing too.
And if I may interject quickly, we were told during Election Day that emergency ballot, this was not an emergency that should have counted emergency ballots, which was crazy because in fact, we understood emergency to have been defined by what existed that day. And we wanted to be sure that we could in fact count those ballots, which is why we had to go to court. Because this was not the emergency that we were told by the Attorney General's office would have warranted the use of those ballots.
So going forward, I can assume there's no more ballots anywhere? Will you find more ballots tomorrow in a different machine?
No.
That's my concern.
We
Every
are
day,
not.
It just keeps
None of
going and
the
going and
machines,
going and going.
correct?
That's my concern.
None of the machines will have any ballots.
Yeah.
So they can't check these machines 2 or 3 days after the election just to make sure there's no ballots in every machine that was
Well,
used?
it's not they. We really
Whoever.
we have to really go and do that.
The law provides that once the election day on the machines is completed and the information is taken out, the cartridges and read, that the machines are locked and cannot be opened without a court order for, I believe it's 15 days. 15 days after Election Day. It allows, and is that today, actually? Tomorrow? It allows time so that if anyone wants to file for a recount and recheck, they can do that while the machines are still sealed. So
On the machine.
the machine,
No, I'm explaining the recount, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah. So the only way to check for emergency ballot bags, whether there were any emergency ballots in there, was to get a court order to be able to check to see if they were any ballot, any envelopes, excuse me, any of the emergency ballot bags were unsealed and used, and take them out. If we didn't have the court order, that would not be able to, no one could be legally able to open any of those machines until at least the 15 days were up.
It's- To interject, to make you smile, a million years ago, one of the elections that I was running was an absolute tie. And the state had took them at least twice to recount the machines and any of the ballots. So yes, that's probably why they have the need. You don't know what's gonna happen in some other small town.
Right.
But it has to be sacrosanct so that everybody can be comfortable in the validity of the election. And my heart goes out to you, because waiting for those results.
It just doesn't
It's
seem
crazy.
right when you're waiting, and then things change, and you're still waiting, then things change again. It's like,
It's great.
you'll be into the next election cycle when you finally have an answer.
You're running again?
That's what it seems like. That's what it seems like.
That happened 2 years ago
Also.
in the mayor election in Saraville. The mayor did not
That's
know.
right.
The mayor race was open for almost a year before someone won it. And it was a recount.
Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So, second.
Roll call, Marie?
Chairman Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Cap?
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin?
Yes.